In this video, we're going to explore what a track mat is, a luma mat and an alpha mat. What are all these mats and what are they doing? They're doing this. The result is some sort of nice transition. Let's work out how to do those now in Premiere Pro. Track mats, luma mats, alpha mats, smoke and ink bleeding transitions, like smoke reveals. These are all kind of the words that get used to do what we did at the beginning there. So the construction is the same, even though the terms are slightly different. We all end up doing a very similar process. So let's get started. First up, in your exercise files under transitions, I got a couple for you. So this is basically what a mat looks like. So it's M-A-T-T-E. I've downloaded a few versions that I found online that are kind of helpful. If you want the full lot of these, you're looking for Premium Beat, also bought by Shutterstock. You'll find I got a bunch of them from here that we're going to use. Okay, and there's a bunch more that you can get from there. So we're going to start with mat 1, 2, and 3. Basically all a mat is, and in our case, we're going to start with something called a luma mat. Okay, luma we know now is something to do with luminance and brightness. Okay, so luma means the white bits in here, okay, are going to stay fine, and the dark parts are going to turn into an empty hole or a mask for our transition. So it's just a bit of footage that is black and white and can be gray. The black bits become masks. You can invert them all, but that's the basic understanding of what a mat is, or at least in this case, a luma mat. So let's get in there. So in Premiere Pro, you pick 1, 2, or 3. Okay, don't use 4. Something else we're going to do. I'm going to use number 2. Okay, so bring in the mat that you like, 1, 2, or 3, and bring in clip 1 and 2, because we're all sick of Irish tourism. So we've got another couple of videos for us. Turn those 2 clips into a sequence. It doesn't matter in which way they are, in which order. Okay, and yeah, track mats. Let's talk about them. They're strange. If you, at the end of this video, go, man, that was weird. Don't worry, everyone thinks they're weird. Okay, so I'm gonna get rid of the audio on these. Who remembers the shortcut? Okay, remember, hold down the Option key and click on Option key on a Mac, Alt key on a PC to delete the audio. Now, the way this needs to work is you need some sort of overlap. It doesn't matter if it's like that or like that, but the 2 clips need to cross over, okay, for this to work. So I'm going to do mine like that. How much they cross over will depend on the track mat you use. In my case, let's have a look at this one, double click it. It's about that long, okay? So it is exactly 1 second, 11 frames long. So it needs to be at least that long overlap. The way to do that though is I'm going to bring in just the video of this one, okay, and that's how much overlap we need. So let's get that there. So they're kind of working. So the way this works is, so that's the strange structure. Your 2 clips that you want to transition between need to be underneath the mat, and they need to be overlapped. So that's phase 1. Phase 2 is adding the effect. Okay, so we're going to go into our effects panel. Okay, and we use something called, if you type in M-A-T-T-E, for the mats, we're going to use this one called track mat key. So key and keying is another word for masking. Track mat is the generic word for luma mats, and I've talked about alpha mats. Track mat is not another one, it's just this is a track. We're using mats, which are these things here. Sometimes they can be alpha mats, sometimes they can be luma mats. I'm going to dump it on here. You're like, that seems logical. No, it needs to go on the clip underneath. Okay, so not on this. This just hangs out there at the top. It's the clip underneath. Okay, I'm going to move it so it's there. Clip underneath, add your effect to. I've got it selected. I'm going to go to my fix controls, and I'm going to say I would like this mat. Oh, compositing using. Are we using an alpha mat or a luma mat? And you're like, I don't know what an alpha mat is. I barely know what a luma mat is. We're going to use the light parts and the dark parts, the luminance. Okay, we're going to do that. And it's still not working. Why? Because we need to decide which track. I'm going to do it on video 3. Remember, we've got 1, 2, and 3. Let me zoom in, plus, shift plus. Remember, I've got, let's make it all bigger for you. Move it down. You can see I've got video 1, 2, and 3. So that's selected. It's a luma mat. It's on video 3. Oh, and it's almost working. You're like, it's working, except it goes black. But that's essentially what it is. You need this structure overlaid each other. You need this structure. You need these 2 transition, things you want to go between. Okay, there can be images, there can be videos. Okay, they just need to overlap for a bit. How much they go is generally depending on the mat. It might be an ink drop, or this, in this case, kind of like circles spinning. Add the effect, okay, which is called a track mat key, to the one underneath the mat. Then just set it to whether it's a luma or an alpha mat. I'll show you an alpha mat in a second. And just make sure it's the right actual track. Okay, in our case, the mat is on video 3. If you move it, it will freak out. Okay, if I say that I've now got another track and I'm copying and pasting it, say, between different sequences, this thing will freak out and go, where'd it go? It can't follow it. It'll still use it. So my effect here, I can say, actually, it's on video 4 now. It'll still work. Just know that if you are maybe copying from one sequence to another and the structure's not exactly the same as this, you've not got everything on the same track, it won't work. So I'm going to undo that because I'm going to show you the other problem that you've seen. Seen's not a word, seen. Okay, it goes black. What happens? Basically, at the end of this mat, okay, it goes completely white. Let me turn off the key just to show you. FX off. Can you see it starts off completely black, which means that you can't see this. And then eventually the white bits appear, they appear, they appear, they appear, until it's completely white and I can see all of this new city track. Okay, let's turn it back on so I can see it all. Okay, so it needs to be white to see it. And then it goes away because this little thing ends. It goes bloop. Oh, there's no more white. So this goes, I don't know what to do now. So I'm going to go black. Okay, so the easiest way to fix that is to grab your, we're going to use the razor tool just because, and we're going to slice it there. Okay, right at the end of this mat, click on this and just delete the mat key. We don't need that anymore. It's done its job. So we're just using it for this bit. Ooh, nice. All right, before we go, I want to show you alpha mat. So we've been doing a luma mat. Remember, track mat is the generic name for all the mats. Okay, a luma mat is when we do a transition that uses the light and dark, and we turn them into kind of holes and masks. So an alpha mat is very similar, except alpha is another word for see-throughiness or transparency. So I'm gonna bring in these two guys again. Okay, where are we? Zoom out. So I've got these two, and I'm gonna do a transition. It's structurally the same. Okay, so I'm gonna make sure that these two guys overlap. Okay, I'm gonna find an alpha mat. Now, I've got this one here. It's downloaded from Envato stock library stuff, and it's just this one here. Now, what is the difference? It kind of looks the same. The difference is it uses transparency. Let me bring it in. Okay. Can you see, even without doing anything, instead of blackness like it did before, and we use that blackness as the mask, it actually has transparency built into it. That's why it's called an alpha mask. Generally, they are not MP4s because MP4 as a container can't have transparency as a general rule. Okay, but MOV can. Okay, often alpha mats will be MOVs. Okay, so I've got this. All I need to do now is exactly the same before. Get the kind of transition so it overlays, then grab my effects. It's the same effect. Okay, track mat key, stick it on the clip underneath, and say, I want you to be an alpha. On what track? It's video 4 now because I'm adding extra layers. Okay, and it does the same sort of thing. All right, so that's an introduction to track mats. Remember, track mats, generic name. The luma mat is the luminance, then the light and dark. Let me turn that on and off. Okay, so it uses the light bits and the black bits to decide how the transition works. And alpha mat, alpha is another word for transparency, see-throughiness. Okay, so for this one here, I can go, let's turn it off. Okay, it's already got transparency as part of it. And we use that for the transition. Have you seen those kind of like ink drop and smoke transitions? That uses the same thing. They'll use track mats. You just got to decide whether it is an alpha mat or a luma mat and use this exact same technique. If it feels confusing, it is. Most people find it confusing. I know I did at the beginning, and it's probably not so much the world of Premiere Pro in terms of video editing. It's much more kind of at home in things like compositing, using something like After Effects, where mats are a lot used more. Okay, so yeah, if you do find it's like, that's weird, but bookmark this so you can come back and know that structure, how the clips need to be. But that's it. Let's escape from the track mat extravaganza, and I will see you in the next video.